Welcome, everyone, to the 8th episode of the 792 Florida Spurs Podcast. I am Hunter Williams, and for today's show, I'm going to be running it solo. We'll try to get a hold. I've already reached out to a guest for next week, and I'm going to hope to try to get Doug and Eric back on in the near future. We just haven't been able to work out the timing yet. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. I was able to attend the Pine Forest versus Columbia game this past week, and I will say I was very impressed with Pine Forest as a team. They obviously struggled in a good sense because they did have 5 turnovers during the game. Those turnovers though were basically forced by the Columbia defense. Early on, Pine Forest did seem to be able to get pretty good rushing yards on the defense, though Columbia did seem to slow down the running production of Pine Forest as the game went on. Columbia did miss several opportunities during the game where they could have probably made that lead much more definitive. They had drop passes, and several times probably those drop passes could have led to very big plays, even touchdowns. So Columbia now goes in their bye week before they prepare to travel on a first of 3 games on the road when they'll travel to rival Gainesville down at Citizens Field next Friday. Gainesville ended up dropping to 0-3, coming off a loss to Oakleaf, which I will say that with that game, I wasn't exactly surprised by the score. I was surprised by how decisive it was. In that game, Oakleaf ended up defeating Gainesville 37-6. Other noteworthy scores from this past week, we saw defending 8A state champion Mandarin fall to Bartram Trail in a district matchup 32-7. Not surprised by the result, since I did pick Bartram to win. I was surprised by how that it ended up being a blowout. But very good win for the Bears of Bartram Trail. Another one was Saturday game. Robert E. Lee knocked off defending 4A state champion Raines 15-7. American Heritage Plantation defeated Trinity Christian 31-17. And another one that was a bit of an upset that I noticed. Booker T. Washington in Miami defeated the 8A runner-up from last year, Columbus, as Miami Washington, aka Booker T. Washington, won 34-11. In an overtime game down in Polk County between 2 undefeated teams, Lake Gibson pulled out a 26-20 win over Auburndale. Lincoln knocked off Navarre in a district game 35-20. Lincoln will play Niceville this week in another district matchup, which we'll get to a little bit later. And South Dade pulled out a very tight battle over Miami Norland. So we did some pretty good, interesting games from this past week. But enough about week 4. It's time to move on to week 5. As I mentioned just briefly a minute ago, Lincoln will take on Niceville in what may very well end up being a district matchup there. Lincoln comes into the game at 3-1, while Niceville comes in 4-0. So far, Lincoln's only loss came to the Rockledge Raiders in week 2, 34-20. They also have wins over Tallahassee Godby, 32-12, 43-0 over Tate, and of course, as we mentioned earlier, 35-20 over Navarre. So far, Niceville defeated Mosley 15-0, Chattahoochee 41-0, Fort Walton Beach 29-17, and this past week they knocked off Crestview 24-13. This should be a very good matchup up there in the Panhandle, and this is to be a tough matchup. I'm going to take the home team here. I'm going to take Niceville in a close one. It's going to obviously be a challenge for them, though, but I feel like being at home is going to give them what they need to pull out a tight win over what appears to be a very solid Lincoln team. Another one, this will be an out-of-state matchup. Lowndes up in Valdosta will be playing host to Miami Northwestern. So far on this season, Lowndes has defeated Drew from Riverdale, Georgia, 69-6. They've also defeated Chappanet Catholic from over the Miami area, 44-14. Parkview, 38-7, and East Croatia, 27-3. And of course, it's very tough to play up in Lowndes. So far, they have played host to some Florida teams in the past, and they have not lost any of those games. They had a very tight battle with Plant about a decade ago. That's the closest anyone's come from Florida to actually defeating Lowndes. Northwestern's going to have their work cut out for them. So far on the season, Northwestern knocked off the defending 5A state champions week 1, 32-0 over Cardinal Gibbons. They knocked off a team that was considered a 4A favorite, 10-0 over Carroll City. They dropped a game to IMG 24-7, and they rebounded this past week to knock off Miami Killian 48-13. This is going to be a battle for Northwestern. They're going to have play very good defense up there, and they're going to have to play disciplined. But I will take the Florida team. I will take Miami Northwestern to knock off Lowndes on the road. I will say probably by a touchdown. Another North Florida game to keep your eye on up here would be Madison County playing up at home against Florida High out of Tallahassee. So far, Madison County is undefeated, but in my opinion, they have faced pretty light competition. They defeated Crescent City 41-0, Jefferson County 55-0, Rickards 28-6, and this past week they gave up 28 points at home to Suwannee in a 55-28 win. On the other hand, Florida High so far had defeated the FAMU Baby Rattlers 41-0, the Taylor County Bulldogs 52-12. They slipped by Charles 20-19, and they knocked off PK Young this past week 43-0. Being that this is in Boot Hill, I will take Madison County in a close one. I do feel like eventually Madison County will be tested. I think specifically October 4th against Columbia will be one of their biggest challenges of the season. But I will give them the home win here in a close one. And what may perhaps be one of the most interesting matchups up here in Northeast Florida, Robert E. Lee will be hosting Mandarin 6 p.m. tomorrow. So far in the season, Lee is 2-1 they had an opening game loss in the Bolt City Showcase 48-20 against Barchin Trail. Then they've rebounded the past 2 weeks with a 33-14 win over West Nassau, and then knocking off the defending two-time state champion Rains 15-7. On the other hand, Mandarin, they won their game of the Bolt City Showcase 28-12 over Atlantic Coast. They then defeated Ribault 32-13 before falling to Bartram this past week 32-7. Both 2-1 teams is a pretty tough matchup to go with. I'm going to lean with a team that has the better quarterback, and that's also the same team that won the 8A title this past year. I'm going to go Mandarin in a tight one to pull off a pretty almost evenly matched game between Lee and Mandarin. So yeah, I'm going to go the Mandarin Mustangs in a close one here. Another game to watch in the Panhandle will be Pine Forest hosting Navarre. So far in the season, Pine Forest is 1-2. They had their first win come against Tate 31-7, but have since dropped their last two games. They dropped a tight one to Escambia 23-20, and then dropped a game to Columbia 21-13. Navarre, on the other hand, has until this past week was undefeated. They knocked off Gulf Breeze week 1 28-21. They knocked off Pace 34-0. They knocked off Milton 21-13 before falling to Lincoln 35-20 this past week. In this game, Pine Forest is at home, and I will say that with Escambia and Columbia, both are teams that I have ranked in my top 50 for the state of Florida, which we'll get to later in the show. I'm going to go with Pine Forest here at home to rebound after facing some pretty tough challenges. I'm going to give them a close win over Navarre. And the last of our North Florida games that we're going to be keeping an eye on, Miami Carol City versus Trinity Christian. So far, Carol City knocked off Deerfield Beach on ESPN the opening week 24-12 before dropping the next two games as they fell to Miami Northwestern 10-0 and Miami Central 49-26. They rebounded this past week to pull out a tight win over 3A Chaminade Madonna 14-13. Trinity Christian, on the other hand, has had some struggles. They lost their opening game 38-7 to Columbia before defeating Tallahassee Gadby 45-42 in overtime over in Tallahassee. They then fell in double overtime to Venice 50-49 before also dropping against American Heritage Plantation 31-17. So Trinity's going to come in 1-3 into this game. They are at home. In this game, it's going to be a very tough challenge for them because at the rate they're going, they keep dropping games. Despite having the toughest schedule in the state, they might end up being forced to sit at home and watch the playoffs instead of actually getting to play in it. This is a tough game to pick, honestly. I'm leaning Carol City at this point. I will say I would not be, though, surprised if Trinity could pull its upset. And I will say, on the record, Trinity needs this win badly. And to move on to our Central Florida games, we have Apopka versus Dr. Phillips. This game's going to be at Dr. Phillips. So far, Apopka is 2-0 on the season. They have a 27-12 win over Coral Gables and a 41-12 win over Ocoee. Dr. Phillips lost their opening game to Sanford Seminole 35-13, but have since won their last three games as they defeated Timber Creek 24-14, West Orange 14-7, and Boone 21-20. I will say that it feels like Dr. Phillips has struggled. They're playing very tight games right now against solid teams, not exactly top level teams. Apopka is a very good program. I'm actually going to lean Apopka pulling off the road win here over Dr. Phillips. Another game to keep your eye on in the Central Florida area, as Vero Beach will be hosting Merritt Island. So far, Vero Beach is 2-0 on the season. They have a 7-3 win over American Heritage Delray, and they have a 28-14 win over Lake Minneola. So far, Merritt Island is 3-0, as they have a 42-12 win over Gateway, 31-14 over Astronaut, and 24-15 over Palm Bay. This is a very underrated matchup in the Central Florida area. Part of me is I'm personally not sure who to pick in this game. Vero Beach is at home. I will say Merritt Island could definitely make a huge statement by winning this game. I'm going to lean Vero Beach by a field goal. Very close game in this one. Would not be surprised if Merritt Island was able to pull out an upset win, though. And Vero Beach is currently on, I believe, is a 55 or 56 game regular season winning streak. So they do have that going to this game. Another interesting matchup in Brevard County, as Vieira will be hosting Rockledge. Rockledge is 3-0 in the season. They have a 19-7 win over Ware County, Georgia, 34-20 over Lincoln, and 42-6 over A.O. Golly. While Vieira is 1-1 on the season, they lost their opening matchup to Cocoa 27-10 but rebounded to beat Centennial 24-9